What's going on, guys? It's Madman Plant, and we are back in the podcast studio. I will tell you, we have a lot of people signed up for podcasts. It must be the podcast season to sign up because it has been a little bit nuts lately, which means you have a podcast every Wednesday from now on. And if you are in the Fredericksburg, Virginia area, this upcoming Wednesday, July 9th, I have a in-person live mental health panel called Healing the Hustle, which is all about small business entrepreneurs and the PTSD, the trauma, the parenting, all the things behind the scenes of these small business owners and how we all get through it. We have an incredible panel lineup of 5 wonderful guests. And if you want, you can look that up on Vindic EU on Facebook on our page. But I really encourage you guys to check it out. It will be recorded, so I will be posting it on my social media. But it's a great way to really talk about mental health. And tonight we're going to be talking about mental health. But before I dive in, just want to give you a quick update to where we are with the Grow series. So right now we are in flower and we are about week 2 and everything is stretching really nice to the point that it's now almost going to go through the lights. So the lights, I think, are going to have to be lifted up to their highest position, which is good. I should have done a second trellis net, but this was my first round and I kind of underestimated the size of the plants based in its environment. But I will tell you, the current culture H2O system did amazing. And it is really awesome because to be able to, when I had problems in the beginning, to be able to catch up in like the 3 months that I did, like it shouldn't be done. But with current culture H2O and DWC, that's the fastest rate possible when it comes to growing, and it showed dividends, and we are back on schedule, and these plants are going to be huge. They're going to be amazing, and best of all, that we're going to be showing it all on the YouTube channel. So tonight we got Josh Datant with us. He's a musician, a PTSD and trauma survivor, and he's also appeared on Soft Wipe Underbelly. So let's bring him on real quick. How's it going, Josh?
Hey, man. Good to see you.
How are you doing today?
I'm great. Great to be here. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So before we get to the dark stuff, what is new in your life with your music and everything?
Right now, I'm working on a record with a female artist who it's coming along pretty good. It's rock. It's kind of like rootsy too. There's some red dirt in there. And then I'm working on another record with another female artist. It's kind of indie rock based. And then I'm scoring a couple of films and working on a couple of series as well. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
That's fantastic. Now, films too. So you're not only a musician, you're an actor.
No, I'm scoring the films, so I'm making the music for the films.
Now that's very cool. Kind of like when Eddie Vedder did the soundtrack for Into the Wild. A lot of that. So right. the whole movie would be all your music, essentially,
yeah,
or multiple pieces.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Now, are you allowed to say what the movie's about, or is
sure,
that all ND?
One of them's called Living Undone. It's about the American prison system.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and then another one's called For the Love of Christ. It's a religious film. It's a faith-based film.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a couple of I have an action movie. I don't know what it's called right now off the top of my head. I forget. I think it's called Lethal Action.
Okay.
And then I did a series on YouTube called D-Day by Land, Sea, and Air, which was done by Black Rifle Coffee Company.
Okay, that's a great brand to work with. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. And then I've done a couple of short films. One's called Sweet Boy. Another one was called Falling Up. A lot of films over the last year.
Now, is this something like, do you have an agent that you work with, or is this all, just you being an entrepreneur on your own journey? Like, how does somebody say, hey, I'd love to get linked up with a film, and then have a film that just happens to need music?
Yeah, I'm trying to get an agent right now. I'm in pursuit of an agent, and I have a couple of agencies that I've been talking to for representation. But yeah, for right now, I'm just a free man kind of hustling by myself.
Well, that ability to make those networks and connections on your own just prove how much more you can do for yourself. And I think that's even greater. I'm kind of like you. I don't have an agent or anything special. It's just me, behind the madness. So as an artist in a different type of way, I totally love that hustle. You know what I mean? It's the building it and they will come. And especially in a way where your music not only just has like sentimental value to you as a person, but also to the value of the fact that it can be used in movies. You think outside the box, outside of your own natural environment to create something for someone else, because I'm sure their vision may be different than what you traditionally would do or talk about. Is that true? Or
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Sometimes I get along with directors really well, and they just kind of let me do what I do by
yeah,
myself, and they really dig it. And then sometimes I have much more involved directors that are like, you're not hitting it quite right. I've been fired from a couple of jobs because not for anything personal, just the director was like, yeah, we're just not. It's not clicking. We don't see things the
there's
same
nothing wrong
way.
with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now you got that experience, so maybe you can write some songs based off of some of the things that you were going to talk about. I always look at negatives, like when that happens or something, like, and for my instance, or like when a partnership ends or a sponsorship, not to be negative and think it's a loss. It just wasn't a fit now, but doesn't mean it wouldn't be a fit later. It's not an us problem. It's them just not seeing what they need, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And I love that. So that's powerful, man.
I also have to shout out my partner,
Oh,
Alicia.
great.
Yeah, Sutaja. She's my partner and all that stuff. And then Arturo de las Fuentes and then Kenny Schwartz. I have a team of people that I work with. It's not just me. I don't want to take all
Well,
the
that's
credit.
even great. Yeah. Well, and that's what it takes. It takes a village, no matter what you do. And that circle of influence, those people that believe in you, want you to succeed, are very vital to the abilities that you will have. So it's great to have those people, and great for you for shouting them out, and giving them the credit that they deserve. Some people want to say it's all them when it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So okay, so a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight is going and kind of opening up about childhood trauma, the emotional neglect, and early exposure to like chaotic environments, if you will. And then we're also going to be talking about addiction. We're going to be talking about mental health, hitting rock bottom, music and healing, and then kind of where you are today. So I got some notes here. So pretty much, I think it was you that made the statement. I think it was. It said, "I didn't decide to destroy my life. I was just trying to survive the pain." Is that what your quote?
I don't know. It sounds familiar. It could have been.
Okay, when I was watching the episode, I swore you said something like that. If it wasn't for verbatim.
Yeah, maybe. It's possible that episode was kind of it's a little foggy now for for different reasons, but um
Were you
yeah,
were you at that time using? Is that why you said that?
I had just relapsed around that time for the interview. I was on my medication. I was taking medication at the time called Subutex.
Okay.
It's an opioid. It's basically given to you by doctors. Um, but I was abusing it, and so yeah, I wasn't 100% honest in that podcast, which I should have been, but I was having kind of a rough time, and so it's a little blurry.
Um, Kind of walk me into that room in that moment. Like you just described. Like talk about the confusion, the lostness, like, and then trying to either produce music or an interview. What is that like when you're completely like fogged, or how you described?
So like I don't really write music when I'm under the influence of dope because or medication because I feel like it's not me and I just honestly like
Hmm,
I can't write as well when I'm messed up. I've always written things
interesting.
under I've either been withdrawal or I've been, mostly sober. I was never one of those people that got high and walked right into something. So for the interview, I had taken probably a little too much of my Subutex that day,
And
and
what is that? I don't know what that is.
it's buprenorphine. It's an opioid that is given to you by the doctors so that you'll basically, it's like methadone if you're familiar with methadone.
I know methadone.
Yeah, it's in the same vein as methadone. It's just it's a pill. It's not a liquid, and it yeah, I mean it gets you high if you take too much of it. And so I took a little too much of it that day because I was a little bit nervous and I was kind of going through something at the time. Uh, and so I did the interview was 100% honest in that I told the truth about everything that had happened in my life. I just
Mhm.
wasn't 100% honest about being sober in that moment.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, why do you recognize that is importance today? Like, for instance, like to acknowledge it on another podcast. What do you recognize about that? You know what
Well,
I mean?
yeah, I went into the room under the pretense, making people believe under the pretense that I was sober and
Mhm.
that I had beaten the addiction. And I was even asked like if I was on Suboxone, and I basically alluded to the word no. But I think it's important for me to be first and foremost honest with myself. And once I'm honest with myself, I can be honest with everybody else. So yeah, I don't want people to be influenced by me in any way or anything like that, but I just think it's important to be 100% transparent and honest and frank about what you're doing, and especially when you're trying to advocate for sobriety, I think that's super important.
Where did you realize that was so important versus the lie? Like even like Liver King, for example, when he said that he wasn't on steroids, but everybody knows he's on steroid, was on steroids, right? And then he finally did admit it. Why? Like, how do you accept that now but deny that at the time? Like, why would you hold to a lie versus today where the truth is like setting you free? Is it
Yeah, I
because you
think
were just scared to be honest, or
no, I just didn't want I wanted to influence people to be sober. I wanted people to be like um I wanted people to know that I was serious about sobriety. I didn't know how to say, I fucked up. Like it was kind of hard in that moment. I hope to do that show again one day and kind of come clean. But I think this is a great platform to do so in that respect. It feels liberating to be able to say now, I was not 100% sober that day, and I should have been because I was advocating for sobriety. And I just think it's kind of tacky to lie. I've never been somebody that enjoys lying. I don't like people that lie generally. And a lot of people say that about other people and themselves. They don't like liars, when in all actuality they are liars. Me, I really don't. I don't like lying. It feels icky to me.
well, yeah, and then you have to remember a story, and then how many stories can you really remember? And then you start slipping up, and then you got to cover yourself. No, I used to be in that where I will be honest too. I haven't always been the most truthful person, but as I've gotten older, I have seen the 100% value of just being honest versus trying to live a lie. And that in itself is free. You know what I mean? It's okay to accept, you are where you are, we all want to be who we want to be, but in reality, we're ourselves. And I love that truth because, like you said before, how can I be truthful to other people if I can't be truthful to myself? How could you keep addiction if you couldn't even keep the truth, honest to people? And that's really important. So let's talk a little bit about the phase, prescription meds and pain pills, and the turning point into addiction. Now, you began with prescribed painkillers, not street drugs, and this was it was an injury, correct? I can't hear your audio. Well, while you're waiting to come back on, it says, do you feel like the nerves of being on that previous podcast caused the usage as a way to overcome the nerves? When he comes back on, we'll follow up with him. He think he might have had issues. But in the meantime, guys, thanks so much for the comments. Here he is.
So sorry about that. Can you hear me?
You are awesome. Yep, no worries at all. We actually
Okay.
got a great comment from Legendary Leafies, which is our bronze sponsor, and he says, "Do you feel like the nerve of being on that previous podcast caused the usage as the way to overcome the nerves?"
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was really nervous because that's a big platform and I knew thousands of people were going to be seeing it, and I had a weak moment, and basically, I tanked. I caved in and I took too much of my prescription. I should like to add, I'm not using painkillers anymore. Excuse me, not painkillers. Prescription medication anymore. I don't take the buprenorphine. I do take kratom from time to time. So some people don't agree with kratom. They think it's still like a hardcore substance. I don't feel that way. It's a plant and it's from the earth, and it does help with my opiate cravings, and I don't rob and steal to get it. I don't commit crime. You know what I mean? It helps with my cravings. It grows on the earth. It's totally helped me. I'm not addicted to it. I don't take it all the time. I sort of take it when I want to. Um, but yeah, I'm without the use of the prescription medications.
Well, fantastic. And congratulations. First of all, that's amazing. And second of all, I'm like you. I don't really do the pain pills. Now I'm on certain medications like for acid reflux, and like I'm on an SSRI for mental health, but a very low dosage. But like you, I turn to cannabis, 24/7. If I really need to feel like I need to escape, which I don't use it as an escape, but I turn to that, and it's better than drinking, in my opinion. It's better than making a bad decision, or in your past, with the pills and stuff. Now, is that correct? It came from an injury, right? From a doctor you started?
Yes.
Okay. And then this led to the phase of addiction. Now tell me how that works. Like, how does it slowly take over?
Well, it was really just right place, right time, or wrong place, wrong time, depending on how you look at it. I was on these prescription meds. My parents were married, and then they went through a nasty divorce. My stepdad cut us off from everything, so we no longer had insurance. And I was sick one day, and I just happened to be at a friend's house who was a lot older than me. And he immediately identified and recognized what was going on. He was like, dude, you're dope sick right now. And I was like, that's not possible. I don't do dope. And he goes, you take those pills, those oxys. And I go, yeah. And he goes, they call that hillbilly heroin. It's the same thing. And I said, well, what am I going to do? And he goes, well, you have two options. You can either kind of deal with what you're dealing with now and it'll be over in a couple of days, or I can call someone that'll be able to help you out, but he doesn't have oxy. He has heroin. And so I looked at him for a second. I said, "Will I not feel the way I'm feeling now?" Because I was in withdrawals, in full blown withdrawals. And he was like, "Yeah, it'll take away your withdrawals, but then you'll have an addiction to heroin. You might as well stop and just kind of suffer for a few days." And I chose the bad road, I guess you could say. I was like, call him up. I bought a $20 bag of China White, and I snorted it and felt better within 5 minutes, and immediately said to myself, I'm in big trouble. Right out loud, I remember getting nice and high and nodding off and saying out loud, I'm in big trouble.
Sounds like a turning point.
Yeah, absolutely. Major turning point.
Talk about it.
So I was about 15 years old at the time, and in my mind, my heroes were Jimmy Page, the guitarist for Led Zeppelin, and Slash, the guitarist for Guns N' Roses. And these guys did heroin. They were known junkies. And so I kind of said to myself, all right, I guess I have this addiction to heroin now, but my heroes used the same drug, like, and they were very creative and very, you know, accomplished and, they were virtuosos. So maybe I can be too as a musician. Maybe I can use this as a way to sort of grow creatively. Now, pretty early on, I recognized that when I was high, I couldn't really do much of anything. So I couldn't write. So I'd have to wait a couple hours and sober up before I could start writing music again. So it was never something I used for creativity, in that, it's like acid. I've done acid and I was able to write pages of music. It opened me up a lot. And I'm not saying that to say you should go do acid. I'm just saying that was my experience. But with heroin, it was very different. I couldn't really do much of anything. I was stuck in one place, very isolated. And yeah, but it was a major turning point, and I knew right then and there that I would be addicted. And I didn't know for how long, but I knew I was going to be addicted for some time. And so that was kind of where I was at.
So I had a question. I had a response here. What were you hiding from the world at that time? What do you think the biggest thing that you were trying to run from? Like to call the dope man, while you're thinking about getting sick, seems like almost a scene out of a movie. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It seems like one of those like weird independent films where they have this crazy storyline, right? So
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about that. What do you feel like you were hiding the most at that time from yourself
Well,
or from other people or
I didn't know it at the time, but I was very used to chaos. My life was very chaotic, and my mother she did the best she could, but she was abusive. She was an alcoholic. She was very she had very different viewpoints than I have now. If I just to say it bluntly but quickly, we don't agree on very much of anything anymore. And at the time, I didn't realize it, but I was running away from my home life. My stepfather was extremely abusive, not only to us but to her. He was very violent. My mother had alcoholic, violent outbursts, and so I wasn't home a lot as a kid, and I didn't know it at the time, like I said, but I was running away from that. I was trying to escape that, my home life. And I always wanted to be with my friends, and I never wanted to be alone. And so when I was on heroin, it made me feel perfect. Like I was completely at peace and at ease with everything. I could be around whoever and it didn't bother me. Like it just made me feel totally, totally perfect, totally at bliss. So I started buying heroin and taking it home because I felt like, this makes living at home tolerable. And I hated being at home. I didn't realize it,. I hated being at home.
so when you're on heroin? I've never done heroin. I've done
Good.
ketamine before, and that's an isolation drug where you kind of just want to go lay in a hole or in your bed. Now, I am a fan of mushrooms, and I do microdose from time to time. But when you're on heroin, what is that like? Like in your perspective, for just Josh, what is the daily like? Are you injecting it? Are you snorting it? And then like, do you associate with people? Do you talk to people? Do you just lay in bed all day and nod out? Like, how does that work?
So there's a couple of different phases. At first, I was nodding off pretty bad, but then over time, I built up a tolerance, and it was making me much more productive. I would clean, I would get up and do stuff. I'd want to go socialize. It was giving me a lot of energy. And at first I was snorting it, and that wasn't that wasn't doing it for me anymore. So I started smoking it, and then eventually I started shooting it, and I got really bad. My veins started to collapse, and I started to get infections and stuff. And so I stopped injecting it, and it was become my track marks were starting to be really noticeable.
Hmm.
So I went back to smoking it, and then I started dabbing it. I was dabbing heroin, and that was my
I
favorite
didn't
way
even
to
know
do
you
it.
could do that,
Yeah, absolutely.
like with the dab rig,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
literally like something like this.
yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
Okay.
Because you have China white, which is a powdery
Yeah.
substance, but you can take like different laxatives and mix them up, and it'll become chunky and sort of. Or you have what's called black tar, and tar is literally like a gunky substance. It's like it's chunky and thick and sort of syrupy. So you can take pieces of it and dab it, and it'll get you nice and high. And then you have fentanyl, which is I started doing fentanyl too. It was in rock form, so you could take those rocks and dab those, and that would
Wow.
get you blasted.
Now, when did all the fun, productive, and all the other stuff start to wear off, and the decay of being a user really set in? Because, like
On
for
it,
instance, I didn't mean to cut you off, but just to give you a final thought, when I first went to the rave scene and started doing a lot of psychedelics, I first saw everything as very magical and like this magical place where everybody just looked fun and youthful. Well, as I spent more time in the scene and started, continuing to do psychedelics, see, I treated it like a football game. I hang out with my friends, I party, and then back to on Monday, I'm back to work, not doing just smoking weed, right? A lot of them were addicts and didn't leave the party. And over time, I remember one time I was heavy on mushrooms and I looked at them and I could literally see the decay in their faces, in their teeth, and everything. And I realized that these people that I was associating with are also decaying of addiction. And it was a very eye opening experience because when I first went into it, it seemed so magical, just kind of like what you said, where I felt social. I wanted to do stuff. I felt great on it. I thought I could make it work. I thought it could be for music. You know what I mean? Talk about that.
so honestly, I was a junkie for about 20 years before it started to take effect on my personal life, and that's because I was always really good at hiding it. I always set myself up for success in that I always had dope to make sure I didn't get sick, and if I did get sick, I had this sense of peace with it. I would just tell myself, well, I'm going to be sick. I'm going to feel like I have the worst flu ever, but I will eventually get a hold of more dope and it'll be okay. And if I don't, well, then I'll, get clean and then I'll build up, I'll lose a little bit of my tolerance. And the next time I get high, I'll get nice and high. So it was really when I started smoking meth. That's when the decay set in, and that's when everything started to take a turn for the worst. I One time I had a record deal, and I had a condo. I was in a relationship. I had several cars. I was making money. I was doing really well. I was really successful, but I ended up working with somebody who was like a hero of mine, and he produced my record. And he introduced me to meth. And when I started doing meth, at first I was super productive, and I taught myself all sorts of things because I was staying up for days on end, and I was really focused, really hyper focused and into what I was doing. But eventually I started doing too much, and I started having psychotic breaks and getting paranoid and freaking out, and I lost my place to live. I lost my vehicles. I lost a bunch of gear. I sold some of it. I got some of it stolen by drug dealers that I was letting come over to my house. I lost teeth. Uh, I eventually I lost custody of my son, um, and yeah, it a lot of it had to do with my meth use.
Now, actually, I'm glad that you brought that up because it seems now your son's with you today, right?
He's not with me today. He'll be here tomorrow.
So it seems like everything has started to go back to the way it should have been, with you and with your son and everything. Now, during that time, Do you as an addict see these things falling apart where it's like, wow, man, I lost a tooth, I guess, I'm really in trouble, like you said? Or is it one of the things where it's just like, fuck it, I'm just going to do more and then I'm going to get blasted and it'll be all right, I'll figure it out? Like, what's the thought when the decay is really saying you're really losing?
I was lying to myself big time. I was like, you know what? I'm now a free agent. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. I don't have to answer to anybody. When I lost my record contract, I was like, I'm an asset. They don't know what they're doing. They'll want me back, and if they don't, somebody else will, which is not the case at all. I worked very hard for that deal and lost it, and after that, nobody wanted anything to do with me. I lost a bunch of friends. Like I said, I lost my place to live. I lost my vehicles. I was without a home. And I just continued to lie to myself and tell myself, I'm doing whatever I want. I'm living how I want. And I'm happy above all else. I'm really happy. So fuck it. I'm okay.
Now, with the whole, confidence thing, what soured the deal? Did you get like an argument with somebody, or you just weren't producing deadlines and, meeting expectations on your contracts? Like, what would happen, for that? Because it sounds pretty severe.
Basically, I got caught smoking heroin in a bathroom one night when I was supposed to do a gig.
Hmm.
And the owner of the label was like, you have two choices. You either go to rehab and you get off the dope, or you're off the label. You lose your contract. And so I said, well, I'm not going to rehab. I guess this is goodbye, you know.
All right. So I've talked to a lot of people who have used, very addicting drugs like that. And, there's a turning point where you start to choose you over the drug. How does somebody from that mindset realize that today you would choose sobriety in an honest way and to just rebuild yourself versus saying, fuck it, I guess I am who I am, and just go right back to it? Because I guess, and also another way is, you fight every day for your sobriety, I'm sure. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, it all came to a head, and I've had a couple of relapses over the years. I started getting clean in September of 2021, but I've had a few minor relapses over the years. I haven't gone full back, into addiction, but within a month, I had been shot. A bullet grazed my arm, and it didn't penetrate my skin, but I don't know if you can see it. There's a scar right there.
Yeah, I can
But
see it.
I got shot, and then I got stabbed multiple times. There's some of the scars right there. I got stabbed in the neck. I got stabbed in the arm. I got stabbed in the stomach. I got stabbed all over the place. And
Like a
this guy
drug
was
deal gone wrong, or
basically, yeah, well, it was a guy trying to rob me.
um,
I had $3,000 on me, and he was trying to rob me. So I got stabbed, and then I found out my brother had passed away from an overdose. Now, I didn't know it was
sorry
an
to hear that.
overdose at the time, but thank you. But I had suspicions because I had been living with him, and then I relapsed, and he wanted me out, and sort of I got into an argument with him and was like, I know you're using too. I don't get why you're so upset about me doing it. And he was like, I'm using, but I have a job, I have a place to live, I have a car, I have stuff. You don't have anything. You're just using me and you're freeloading. And so we got into this big fight, and thank you, Lacey. And we were arguing about who is the better junkie. You know what I mean? And the last thing I said to my brother, sorry, um, I just said, fuck off and fucking die. I told him to die, and it's like a couple weeks later he did die. And so I was at my wit's end. I didn't have anywhere to go. I couldn't talk to anybody in my family. My brother died, and I couldn't go to his funeral because if I went, I'd either go dope sick and be in withdrawals, or I'd be high. And I didn't want to disrespect my brother like that. I didn't want to see my mom. I didn't want to see my son. because I felt like such an embarrassment and a failure. And um, I had had enough. During my days as a criminal, I was committing identity theft. So I was stealing money from people's checking and savings account. I was, opening up credit cards in other people's names. I was printing, fake checks and cashing them, and that's how I was surviving. And I was living out of hotels, and so I just got to this place after I found out my brother died. I was like, I can't believe this is what my life is. This is really what my life is. I had everything I ever wanted, a record deal, a nice place, vehicles, gear, gigs, a girlfriend, and I lost it all over drugs. Like I just threw it away. In fact, I never lost anything. I gave it away happily and readily for dope. So I basically I went and I dropped someone off at the methadone clinic this one morning, and I parked in a neighborhood, and I had this it was a High Point 380. It's a gun, and I had told myself, this is it. I'm going to shoot myself in the head. And I pulled up to this spot in this neighborhood, and I was getting ready, and I said, well, I can't die sober, So I got nice and high, and
not to laugh, but that is a little bit dark humor. That is a little bit ironic. It's like, well, wait, hold on. I have to do one last time. I mean, you can't shoot yourself not sober. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's just the thought of it, like, oh, well, I have to do this,
yeah,
So, sorry about that.
No, it's all good. It's kind of like in the movie Wolf of Wall Street when they're in the boat, they're in the yacht, and the yacht's about to crash, and he goes, "I will not die sober. Where are the lewds?" That's
exactly.
That's kind of how I felt. I was like, I can't die sober, and I guess you could say getting high saved my life, because I got so high that I was holding the gun, and it sort of went off right next to my head because I couldn't focus or function. I was drooling on myself, and I did a lot of meth and a lot of heroin, and the gun went off. It whizzed right past my ear, hit the back windshield, and I jumped up, and my adrenaline, my heart was pounding. I went, whoa, and I went, okay, I changed my mind. I don't want to do that anymore. But I guess the shock and the adrenaline and the drugs all kicked in at once, because I passed out just like that right after. And I passed out hard. I'd already been up for a couple of days. So I woke up to police officers knocking on my window, and I went, great, here we go again. I had been locked up so many times. I've been in every institution you can be in at this point, except for rehab. I hadn't gone to rehab yet. And so the cops pull me out, and they immediately put me in cuffs because they saw the gun and the drugs, and they're like, what are you doing? And I said, honestly, I was trying to kill myself. And I just want you to take me to jail right now, because if you don't, I will kill myself. And this police officer looked at me, and he goes, why were you trying to kill yourself? And I explained everything. I said, I've just been stabbed. I've been shot. I don't have a place to live. I don't have any family. I don't have any friends. My brother just died. And I'm over it. I'm over everything. And as soon as you take me to jail, I'm going to hang myself. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I'm just over everything. And this police officer, he goes, well, do you have anybody I can call to confirm all this with? And I said, you want to call someone and confirm that I tried to kill myself? And he goes, no, just about your brother and your living situation. And I said, well, you can call my mom, but she'll probably hang up on you. At this point, she's so sick of hearing from police officers, I doubt she'll want to talk to you. So he puts me in the back of his car, and he gets on the phone, and I assume he's talking to her. Well, he gets into the car. He doesn't say anything to me, and he doesn't say anything, and I don't say anything to him. And we're driving, and I just had this thought, this very strange, sobering moment. And I immediately started praying, and I said, God, universe, Jesus, Allah, Buddha, whatever's out there, whatever looks down on us, I changed my mind. I don't want to go to jail. So please help me get a bond. I was on probation, so the likeliness of me getting a bond was like slim to none. And when you get arrested while you're on probation, it's a major no-no. That's usually an automatic prison sentence. So I was looking at some pretty hard time, and they found me with guns and drugs and checks that weren't in my name and IDs and credit cards. They found all that stuff. So I pray and I said, I just want to see my son one more time, and I just want to see my mom and uh, you know, tell her I'm sorry. Um, because the way I'm living, it doesn't work, And I felt so bad for my son, like it's funny. I can remember when I got stabbed and the EMTs were trying to get me, you know, comfortable. They said, "How you feeling?" I said, "I just want to see my son. I just want to see my son." And I always had that thought in the back of my mind. I just want to see my son, and I don't know why, but the dope was pulling me away from him. So anyway, we're driving and I finished praying and we pull up to this building and I didn't recognize it. I was extremely familiar with the jail. I knew exactly what the jail looked like. And I go, "Where are we?" And the police officer said, "We're at the Southwest Vista Hospital." And I said, "What are we doing here?" And he said, "I'm taking you to get a psych eval and to detox." And I said, "Well, so when do I go to jail?" And he goes, "I'm not taking you to jail." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "I'm not taking you to jail." He goes, "I've seen your rap sheet. You've been to jail numerous times. Clearly that doesn't work for you. I just thought it would be nice to try to give you a chance at repairing your life some other way." So I looked at him and I immediately started crying and I just said, "I'm so sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And he knew I wasn't talking to him. He said, "Speaking of sorry, you should really call your mom. She misses you a lot, and so does your son. Um, you've got people that really care about you, and they want to know you're okay. You should call them." And so I said, "Okay, And so we get inside, and they immediately put me on methadone, and they were trying to detox me. They only had 72 hours, so I got well enough to get up, and I immediately went and called my drug dealer, and I said, "I need you to come pick me up at this hospital. I need to score." And he goes, "Well, where are you? I haven't heard from you in a couple of days," because I was pretty close with my drug dealer, and I explained everything that happened. He goes, "Are you sure you want to do that? Like, why don't you just call your mom?" And I said, "No, man, just come pick me up." And he goes, "All right, well, give me the address. I'll come get you." So I hang up and I go to the front desk and I look at the lady and I remembered back when I was praying. As I was praying, I said to myself, "If you get me out of this, if you get me a bond, if you help me stay out of jail, I promise, I swear, I will try as hard as I can to get sober. I'm not going to say I will be sober and that I'll stay sober, but I will make a real effort this time to be sober, and I will try as hard as I possibly humanly can." So I had that moment of clarity again, and I looked at the woman and I just smiled, and she said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am. What time is it?" She told me the time, and I walked off and went back to sleep. And I called my mom the very next day and I apologized and I asked her if she'd come pick me up, and she did. And I got to see my son, and it was a really great moment. And I was still sick because it takes a lot longer than 3 days to detox off of the drugs I was doing. So my mom said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know, whatever I can to be sober." And so she put me in sober living, and that's where I went. I went into sober living, and that was the "I've had enough" moment. That was my rock bottom. That was where I was like, I'm finished. I can't do this anymore. And as I've said, I've had some relapses over the years. I've had days where I would relapse, or a couple of days where I'd relapse, and then I'd come back to reality and be like, "What the fuck am I doing?" And I would snap back to and get right back to doing the sober thing. But um, as of right now, I have almost 2 years clean. Um, haven't touched anything in 2 years, and so I feel good, But to answer your question, long form, that was my moment.
Well, I think I have to agree with Lacey, and Lacey's my beautiful wife. That's an incredible testimonial, like, and it really is. And that, I do agree with her. I'm so happy that you have your son. I think your son. It seems for whatever reason, obviously because he's your son, but for deeper reasons, when you're fighting an inner battle against addiction, seems like he is a gripping force that the drug did not, because I've talked to a lot of people who are parents and have gone through addiction, and it's not their children they're thinking about in that time. And to be able to use your son as a token, because one, he's your child and you need to be a dad, but at the same time, be able to fight back with that, and that be a motivation is just great, because one day, in a way, your son saved you. You know what I mean? Because, like, if, like, let's say you didn't have a son and you were in that car, you would have really had nothing to live for. You know what I mean? At that point, you were in a really tough spot. That's, you talk about having a hard day because you stub your toe on the bed or something like that, and then you go through a scenario like yours. It's quite the contrast. So, you made some really great points. And as, a person that has talked to a lot of people in this position, you made a really profound statement that said, I might not always be clean, but I'm going to try my best. When you talk about relapse, where does that come from? Like, when I talk to a suicide, attempt victim, it's usually a matter of things happening. It's not just like, oh, somebody yelled at me, so I'm going to go relapse. It's like a collection of things. Would you find that to be true, that it just builds up to a point that you can't handle? And if so, versus now versus then, what do you do to protect yourself?
So it is a slow buildup, absolutely, and it's usually a bunch of things. A lot of it has to do with being upset about my childhood and being upset with my mom about a lot of stuff. I have resentments against her that I got to let go of, but there's that, and then being upset about my brother. The last interaction that I had with my brother was not a good one. Being upset about the fact that he was struggling, and if I'd have just stayed sober while I was living with him, I could have helped him, and then feeling like a failure to my son, and feeling like I really let him down. And then I have two kids now, so I've got
Oh,
a little one and
congratulations.
a big one. Thank you. Yeah. When my first son was born, I immediately went into fight or flight mode and was like, oh my God, I'm going to do it all over again. I'm going to be a screwed up parent. I'm going to ruin this kid's life. What am I doing? I can't believe I got somebody pregnant. And I immediately relapsed because I was like, I'm not going to be able to do it and I'm going to ruin this kid's life. I might as well go out with a bang and say, fuck it. But every time I've relapsed, my wife has jumped in and come to the rescue. She's been my saving grace ever since we met. I met her in November of 2021, right after I started getting sober. And she was in a very interesting spot because she was still drinking and doing drugs as well. But when I told her about my story and how I didn't want to drink or do drugs anymore, she sort of resonated with that and got clean and sober herself. And she's been clean ever since. She's never had a relapse. She's like a superhero. She's amazing. And so whenever I've had these collections of thoughts, the biggest thing that I have failed at is not telling people. Um, I won't tell anybody that I'm struggling, and that's the worst thing you can do, I think. If you're struggling and you feel
100.
a relapse coming on, you have to tell somebody. You have to let people know where you're at, whether it's a therapist or a sponsor or a loved one or a friend. You have to let someone know, hey, like, I'm in a dangerous spot mentally and I might collapse. Help me, please. And so that's the biggest difference now is I've been able to get this amount of clean time because I'll straight up tell my wife sometimes, I really want to use today. And if you don't do something, I probably will. And she'll intervene and we'll talk and she'll get me through it. And then I have a therapist that I go and see every week, and he's great too. And I'll tell him, yeah, I'm having relapse thoughts, and he'll just bring me back down to reality and goes, remember, if you do use everything you've worked for, everything you have will go away. And it doesn't take very long. You'll lose everything you've got, including your freedom. My freedom's on the line because I'm still on probation and they know my behaviors. They know my patterns. They're not stupid. I've told them flat out, that I was a drug addict and that I'm, have a history of chronic relapses. And so that's a big thing. And whenever it gets to be too much, yeah, I have to just take a big step back and let my wife know, hey, I'm in trouble. But the kratom has really helped too. Whenever, and I'm not an advocate for kratom. I think I'm a firm believer that everybody should do what works for them. I did,
100%.
yeah, I did meetings for a while. I was kind of into those, but I got burned out on meetings. And what's really worked for me is getting on the right psych meds, the right antidepressants, therapy, and then the kratom. The kratom is a good system that I have in place. Whenever the cravings are just unbearable, I take the kratom and it really helps. But yeah, for years I thought that pharmaceutical companies were the devil, and I was a firm believer that because I was hooked on prescription pain pills, that's all doctors and pharmaceutical companies wanted to do. And I was against rehab. I was against everything that I'm doing now. And my wife kind of woke me up and was like, no, like these are good things. These will help you. These helped me. Um, my wife was had just started taking Wellbutrin when we first met. She said her life had changed completely. So my wife was the very first person that got me to go to rehab. I kicked and screamed at first. I was like, no, rehab's not for me. It's just a bunch of people sitting around feeling sorry for themselves, and that's not me. It'll never be me, and I don't need it. And she was just like, it's a place where you can go and focus on yourself. Like, what could be better than that? Like, why not go and focus on yourself and do the right things for you so that everything that you've worked for can stay where it's at? And it just hit me. I was like, wow, that would be nice to just go somewhere and think about me. And she's like, it'll be a vacation. You get a nice bed, a nice air conditioned room. Like, people will be trying to help you. You'll get to do activities. Like, she was going through the whole thing with me, and she's like, it's not people feeling sorry for themselves. It's people that are trying to thrive while in a very, hostile environment um, outside of rehab. So yeah, uh, I think that relapse, everybody's different. My wife hasn't relapsed once, I've relapsed a couple times, but I've managed to pick myself up and pick the pieces up and rebuild. I don't know if relapse is a part of everybody's journey, but you really have to do what works for you. If methadone works for you, I say do methadone. If Subutex or Suboxone works for you and you're a productive member of society and you're really doing what you need to do and it works for you, go for it. Those things, I've done all those things. I've done methadone, I've done Suboxone, I've done Subutex. They just didn't work for me. Now I just do the kratom, and that's what works best for me. And I know a lot of people will disagree with that, but it's what helps me survive and what helps me thrive.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. No, and I love that. It is what works for you. And nobody really has a right to say, oh, well, you shouldn't be doing this. If you're improving your life, if you're getting back to a normal place, you should absolutely do it. I can't tell you how many people have criticized me for my cannabis use and said, hey, if I just stopped smoking cannabis, I would be more successful. That what you do, and as you know from being in the music industry, how many people do drugs who make a lot of money? It doesn't drug use and success aren't on this like level where less drug use equals more success or more drug use less equals less, because you have raging addicts in both universes, in poor and in rich. You know what I mean? So I totally agree with you. Also, I wanted to talk too about I wrote down here that people think that getting sober is the finish line, but the real work is everything that happens after. How would you define that?
Yeah, it's like I used to tell people when I was in rehab, this is easy. We can all sit here and say that we're sober and that everything's going to be great and la di fucking da, but the real work starts as soon as we walk out this building, when we're back into life, when we're integrating back into society. It's easy to sit in a room with a bunch of happy, fluffy people that are on a pink cloud and say, oh, I'm going to do great and I'll never relapse and I'll never use again or I'll never drink again. And it's like, okay, well, that's great, but we'll see what happens when you get out. And that's not me being a pessimist. That's me being a realist. I think you really have to consider your life and what you want in life Me personally, I want to have a long, successful career. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good father. Even though it's hard, I want to be a good son, you know. I want to be a good person. So the work, you know, and everybody's journey is different. So you have to do different things that work for you in order to create that success. For me, being creative and having a long, thriving career is like at the forefront of my mind, and it totally makes me happy. Like I'm working towards having a full-time career in music. You know, now I do music about 75%, and then the rest is part-time work for my in-laws. I work for their company. But once I get to that place where I'm 100% doing music, I know like it's going to be off the chain. I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to be doing the thing.
You are.
So,
I also
yeah.
wanted to comment on your wife. I have a beautiful, amazing wife named Lacey, and I've never battled the addiction side, but I have battled the small business side, which in a way is a heartbreak too. And I will commend you on your love for your wife. I really think that that's amazing. I share the same values that you do as being a father, a husband, you know, a good person. And I really like that you use her as a support. I use Lacey all the time as a support network, and the ability to have the trust and the honesty between each other where you can openly look at her and say, "Hey, I think I'm about to use," and instead of her getting mad or, you know, getting triggered from the past, is able to say, okay, well, let's be constructive because we're not going to obviously allow that to happen. And I just think that is so beautiful because that just shows you the honesty that you've created to be able to be honest with yourself. And you know, because most times, you know, as when you were using, you would wouldn't want anybody to know. And now you're like, hey, listen, I'm about to make a really bad mistake. I'm in a bad place. I need some help. And that is like very awesome. And I just wanted to comment that because I just think that behind every strong man is a woman. And it's very cool that you have that. So
Well, thank you. Yeah, it hasn't always been easy, and I have not always been selfless with my wife. I've been very selfish with her. She does so much for me, and I probably take her for granted a lot of
I'm
the
the
time.
same way.
I try not to, and I try to be cognizant of what I'm doing with and for her, but like I've gotten used to her taking care of me, so it's become sort of,
It's not that bad.
yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, in a way, and when you get older or when you're young, you want to be free and nobody tells me what to do. But you know, my wife hands me my meds every day, so I have to be nice to her because she could hand me the wrong pills and that'd be it for me, you know. So
Yeah.
you know, it's one of those things. You know, I definitely enjoy the sentiment of being taken care of, you know, and that's what the love and support is, and that's how you battle a disease like addiction, you know. And you know, you're smiling happy today just like I am, but you and I will both have bad days, you know, and it's what we do in those situations that define it, you know. And you have a great analogy. It all goes away. I have a therapist I talk to every week just like you, with therapy and openly talking, because a lot of this is also to deal with my mental health, because I've almost committed suicide when I was younger. I have a lot of feelings of sadness and just dark shit that goes on in my mind. So, you know, I really use this as a way to communicate to other people, you know, and learn, because I feel like, you know, yeah, we feel sorry for ourselves, but when you get to learn other people's stories, you get to just be appreciative of how many really great people are on the planet and how we can learn from each other's story and how this matters. You know, if you want to solve an epidemic like mental health, we need to start talking about it. And that's why this is so profound. And so are you and your story, you know?
Thank you. Yeah. I have to say too, I relate to you on this. I have ADHD and
Yes.
I take Adderall for
Anymore,
and
but
that's an amphetamine. And you know, I was addicted to meth for many years, and Adderall is very similar to meth. It's a little toned down, but like when you first do Adderall, it feels a lot like meth. So my wife keeps the Adderall in a safe, and only she can administer it to me because I have a tendency to abuse everything. I'll take 5 Adderall at a time and start going on. So it's like we have this
I'll
trust
take
thing where
5 Adderall and get on ChatGPT. I'll really get some shit done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my wife gives me my Adderall. I take my psych meds by myself, but she reminds me every day. She's like, "Did you take your medicine?" And I'm bipolar. I have schizoaffective disorder. I'm manic depressive. I have ADHD. I'm a mess. You know what I mean? So
Well,
my
you are
wife is
great for this podcast. I will tell you that, because this is what I love talking about, the things that matter the most, and just that selflessness of just being so open and honest. It's really a gift for you. And I'm just so glad that you are where you are. But we are at the hour mark, which means we have a 5-minute break. So this will allow you to get up, stretch your legs, go to the bathroom. And we have a full another hour coming, because I want to talk about all those topics coming up. Everybody, we go ahead and take a quick smoke break, or it should be smoking during the episode. Get a refreshment, and we will see you back here in about 5 minutes.
When I get low, there's somewhere I like to go. Out walking with my shadow and my garden friend. Oh, Yahweh, I know you got me in the hand. Though I am tired, you help me stand. But will I be okay?
What's up, guys? If you're enjoying this episode, then you're going to enjoy our gold sponsor, which is Dry Flower, the original hang harvesting system. If you've ever ruined your flower post-chop or lost your terps to a bad dry, it's time to upgrade. Dry Flower makes the full plant hang drying effortless with tools like their drying arms, the rack systems, and the Cannabis Guardian nets, giving you consistent airflow, zero flat spots, and maximum preservation of your strain's full aroma and structure. Built by growers for growers, Dry Flower helps you cure like a king. Our silver sponsor, Current Culture, the gold standard in deep water culture hydroponics. These systems are designed to deliver explosive roots, growth, and nutrient uptake through consistent water circulation and oxidization. Whether you're in a 4-site system for a home setup or a 100-light commercial facility, their undercurrent system and plug-and-play designs make your grow cleaner, faster, and more productive. Precision growing starts at the roots, and that's where Current Culture shines. Legendary Leafies is on a mission to support veterans and break the stigma around cannabis. Through their unique cannabis-themed trading cards, they highlight the plant's therapeutic potential, especially for those that are battling PTSD and anxiety. Legendary Leafies blends education with empowerment, helping veterans and others feel proud and not ashamed of their mental health journey.
When I get low, there's somewhere I like to go. Out walking with my shadow and my garden friend. Oh, Yahweh, I know you got me in the hand. Though I am tired, you help me stand. But will I be okay?
All right, we are back. Look at this nice table setup. Let's bring in Josh. All right. Hope you enjoyed your little break. I don't know if you caught my little video, but it plays through, gives us a little refreshment, so you don't have to sit the whole time. I've done podcasts before where you just like sit the entire time, and I like to be able to get up sometimes.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that you were just mentioning, which are to be like the severe depression, the anxiety, the panic attacks, the bipolar. And then you said, is it schizophrenia or what is it?
Schizoaffective disorder.
And what is that?
It's like schizophrenia, but like a trigger can happen at any time, basically.
Okay.
The onset is kind of unpredictable.
Yeah.
What happens with me is when I start to stress out really bad, and I start like losing sleep, I start hearing voices and seeing things that aren't there,
Interesting.
and
Okay.
yeah, and I know that they're not there because it'll be very vivid things that I'm looking at that, and I'm like telling myself there's no way that's, but my paranoia used to be like, for a long time I was a Christian, as you would call it, and I believed I was possessed by a demon. My views and my spirituality have changed over time. I no longer call myself a Christian. Nothing against Christians. I don't believe the same things as I once did. I do believe in like God, but I just I have a lot of Christian values, I guess you could say. But yeah, spiritually I'm different. But I thought I was possessed by a demon, and so I was seeing things and hearing things that weren't there, and it would freak me out. And because I was so against medication, I wasn't doing anything about it. And I had friends that were, sort of confused, but also Christians, and they were feeding into it a little bit and saying, well, maybe you are possessed by a demon. And my mom, who's a very devout Christian, was like, yeah, you're absolutely being demonically oppressed. And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it anymore, but I know that over the years, I figured out what was going on, and I got on the right meds, and I started talking to the right people. And basically, a lot of those episodes I was having went away. It still happens randomly from time to time. I'll still hear things when I'm trying to sleep. Like I'll hear people talking to me as I'm drifting off to sleep, but it's very, very minimal compared to what it used to be.
Now, when we talk about like voices, obviously, you think of like a movie, like let's say, for instance, when Spider-Man, remember the Green Goblin, he started hearing voices as he was injected by that stuff while he was, talking about how they need to kill Spider-Man and stuff like that. What would the voices say? And would their conversation differ based on what you're going through? Would they ever relate? Was it ever like tangible?
No, it was me in the middle of a psychotic break. So they would say, sometimes it would just be noises. It'd be like, ah, la, 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 la. It'd sound like somebody speaking in tongues.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that was a little bit scary, but mostly it's stuff like, it's nonsensical words. And there have been times where it was voices telling me to do things, but obviously I didn't listen. I just kind of freaked out and hid under the covers, metaphorically. But yeah, it was never like a full-blown personality taking shape and sort of like guiding me and making me do things.
Kind of like in the movie Fight Club, if you will. Are you familiar with that?
Absolutely.
Where he imagined, did you ever like have anything like dissociations like that, where you would see somebody or somebody would like talk to you that wasn't there? Because you said you would see vivid things. Like what would you see?
There's always a guy in a hat. There's a man in a big black hat, and um, I would look at, he's like this guy in an old like 1930s suit and a hat, and I would look and I would see him as clear as day for a second, and then I would turn around and look again, and then he'd just be gone. I don't know what that is. I don't know where it comes from, but it was this one guy. And as for the voices, there were multiple voices, but they said different things. A lot of it, like I said, it sounded like somebody speaking in tongues, like at a Pentecostal church. But it,
But
it did
how do
say,
you? Sorry to interrupt you, but when you interpret the voice, is it human? Is it like a spirit? Like how would you define voice?
yeah, sometimes it really did sound like a bunch of demons talking, like in some weird, strange language I've never heard before. And
Okay.
so that kind of encouraged me to think like, oh yeah, you're possessed by a demon. Um, but yeah, it sounded really demonic at times. And when it first started happening, I started to freak out, so I started losing sleep, and then I started doing cocaine to stay up for work, and that only intensified it and made it worse. So I thought, any day now I'm gonna become possessed, and I'm gonna start, dying and doing all manner of crazy demonic things. Like, it'll happen. The cocaine really exacerbated my my way of living in that regard.
Where do you think the power loss was? Like, it seems pretty surrenderous, or is that even a word? Seems like, like a sign of surrendering. Like, oh, I know it's going to happen, so I'm just going to sit here and wait for it to take over my body. Why not the fight to like fight back or be like, oh, you're not going to take me. Fuck you, devil. Blah, blah, blah. Get your hands off me. Like, why was it so much like, yes, this is going to happen. I know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of days. It's just like waiting for an audition, to hear back from like the producer. You know what I mean? Like, talk to it about that.
I don't know. Honestly, I always felt like at the time I had these really grandiose thoughts, like, and I sort of felt like I was chosen, like I felt like I was the special gift from God, and that I was chosen for something big and great, and now I don't think that's the case at all. I'm just a guy, trying to make it. But at the time, I felt like I was this chosen instrument of God, and so that's why I was being demonically oppressed. And I just sort of surrendered to that because I was scared and I didn't know what to do. And I was like, yeah, I might as well let this happen. I was also using a lot of morphine at the time, which is another opiate. So I was speedballing is what it's called. I was doing morphine and cocaine, and the morphine would help me sleep, because I would be so tired from staying awake for days on end that I would finally sleep. But then I'd sleep for a couple of days and then I'd have to go to work. And so I would do coke, and yeah. And I guess I surrendered because I just, it all goes back to being a dope fiend. I was a drug addict. So I just wanted to get high and let things happen the way they were going to happen,
So all of this is going on. Now, you're not like going to a church where it's like a cult leader telling you, oh, hey, by the way, you're the special one and we're going to sacrifice you to the devil. And, this is, like where does, I guess, the religion for somebody, I guess that's, your mom was religious, but it didn't sound like you necessarily were as like religious as her. Where does that come in? Where is that onset of like this is a religious thing about the devil? Like, where does that come in?
I know it was my mom, 100%. It's not her fault and I'm not blaming her, but like I was directly influenced by my mother, and I believed everything she said and sort of like followed everything she said. So like, like I said before, I believe that psych meds and pharmaceutical companies were evil and were of the devil. And I believed that I was 100% demonically oppressed. And this all led directly back to my mom. I was so influenced by my mom. As a kid, my mom was my hero, so I took everything she said to heart. And, you know, she was telling me that she was having her own experiences with demons and stuff. So I really believed that, you know, I bought it and believed it. And yeah.
So when you look at like a lot of different people who have run into situations, even like serial killers, for instance, the relationships with their either mom or dad are very prominent, right? Why, when you're obviously, besides your mom being your mom, why is it that whatever she said you found so much value in compared to other people? And how did is it because of your like wanting to please her, or just thinking that she always knew what was best? And then you said in the beginning she was your hero, but in later in life she changed. What happened?
So as a kid, my mom didn't really take shit from anyone, and she always did things her own way, and I really admired that. And my mom turned me a lot onto a lot of great things artistically. She supported me. She always showed me really great music. She showed me great films. She showed me great art in general, and was always like, "Go for it, do what you want to do." And I looked up to her for that reason. Now, I really truly in my heart feel my mom is mentally ill, and I feel like she is an alcoholic, and I feel like she has a lot of work she needs to do on herself. It's not for me to say necessarily like what that is, but like I because she was my hero and because she showed me these things and made me feel good, I really looked up to her and took what she said at face value. Um, but over the years, I sort of realized the path she led me down, like some of the directions in which she steered me were just the wrong way, or maybe it wasn't the wrong way, but it wasn't the right way for me. You know what I mean? And so we started arguing a lot more. We had a lot of disputes. Psych meds changed my life. I am now happier, more calm and at peace than I've ever been in my life. And my mom literally tells me that I'm just a drug addict and that I can't wait to get home and take my pills. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. I cannot wait to get home and take my pills because they help me sleep. They help me function well, and they help me stay happy. And, you know, I am a drug addict, I guess. But yeah, like she's not into therapy either. And I love therapy. I love talking to my counselor. Like I look forward to that. She just thinks that Jesus is the way. And, you know, I mean, maybe Jesus is the way for some people. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but the way my mom was going about it was not the right way for me, you know?
So with that being said, what would be some things that your mom would talk about as far as like demons, and did that play in a role into like what you were experiencing? Do you think it was like a placebo effect, where the more she thought she was possessed and you know all this, that you were more and more like this and that kind of amplified it too? Or like, I guess my thing is it just seems like with her addiction, one, to call you out because you're on medicine, she's still an alcoholic, you know, it doesn't seem really fair when, you know, you're trying to improve your life, and in a sense, maybe she stays the same. But how does that chemistry work?
Yeah, no, my mom was telling me at one point that she was being demonically oppressed because she was going through a divorce, and she was like, she was going through sleep paralysis essentially, but she would say that she would wake up and she was being held down and that she couldn't move and that she saw a spirit hovering over her, you know, and that was absolutely sleep paralysis. That is the logical textbook term for it. You know, I've had that happen to me too, where I didn't see a spirit hovering over me, but I've woken up and not been able to move because I was in sleep paralysis. I was still in REM cycle, but you know, my eyes were open. So there was that. And then she believed that my stepfather was demonically possessed, I think. And so she think that carried over to her. And because she was trying to be a stronger woman of God, like she was being attacked by demons. And so again, I thought that I was chosen for some big higher purpose, and that's what I figured when I was in my early 20s. a lot of times, for some reason, mental illness like schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, I think I read somewhere that it starts to manifest in your early 20s. And so that's exactly what happened with me is I started to hear shit that wasn't there and see shit that wasn't there. But I bought into what my mom was saying, you know what I mean? So like, I don't know. And I think I have a lot of resentments against my mom because I stayed with these beliefs for years. I never bothered to look into anything else because I just figured if my mom says it, then it must be so, you know? And so like I sort of have a little bit of a grudge against my mom because I'm like, I could have gotten better years ago. I could have been on psych meds and in therapy and doing the right things that worked for me years ago had I not listened to you, had I just done what a couple of my friends told me I should do, get on some, you know, I can remember my friend Travis was like, dude, you're not possessed by anything. You have schizophrenia. You know, that's totally what it is. He was a psychiatric researcher, and he was like, I'm telling you, if you go see a doctor and you get on the right prescriptions, you won't see that shit anymore. And I was like, no, no, no. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just a non-believer. And I don't know. It's hard for me to say, like, I have friends that are extremely devout Christians, and I don't knock them for that. I think it's beautiful, especially if it helps you be a good person. It's just like, that's not necessarily where I'm at in my faith anymore, you know? And I hold that against my mom a little bit. Um, my mom was a very prominent figure in my life, and I watched her, you know, destroy her life essentially over the years. And I was so used to chaos and thrived in chaos because my mom raised me in a very chaotic environment. We moved a lot, and she got married super quick to someone she really didn't know. She claimed she knew him, but she didn't know him. She hadn't really seen. They dated in high school for a little bit, but then he moved away, and then it's like he came back down to see her and just asked her to marry him on a whim, and they got married, and then he ended up being the psychopath. And so we had to get out of that, and we were homeless for a little while. We had to sleep on the street one night in Chicago because he left us there because they got into a fight and he left us there hours away from our home, literally hours and hours away from our home with nowhere to go, no car, no cell phone, no money. We basically had to walk to a bus station, and my mom cried and essentially begged the woman at the front to give us tickets so that we could get home, you know, and like a lot of this had to do with my mom's decision making. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I hold her partially responsible, and I gotta let that go. Eventually, at a certain point, I'm in control of my own life, and I know that now. And um, I sort of have to, you know, it's the way I live now is the way I want to live, and I'm happy and grateful for that. And in a way, I'm grateful to my mom for showing me the way I don't want to live. You know what I mean? If nothing else, I can look at my mom and go, okay, that's how I do not want to be. You know, I don't want to be somebody who lives in the way that she does. And so she still sort of helps me.
Have you ever heard the song Headlights by Eminem?
I have not. I'm a big
Okay.
fan of Eminem, but I've never heard that song.
Well, I'm going to read you just a lyric or two from it, but I think you should definitely just listen to this song. Some of it, you know, music makes me emotional. So there have been songs like, for his song Save Me, when he was talking about being a father. I actually got it really emotional. I actually cried to that song a little bit. But in this song, he's talking about his mom and really kind of all the things that that happened. And he said, give me 1 second, I want to find the exact lyric. It says, because now I know it's not your fault and I'm not making jokes. That song I no longer play at the shows, and I cringe every time it's on the radio. And I think of Nathan being placed in a home and all the medication you fed us, and how I just wanted you to taste your own. But the medication's taking over now, and your mental health or mental state's deteriorating slow. And I'm way too old to cry. This shit is painful though. But Ma, I forgive you. So does Nathan. All you did, all you said, you did your best to raise us both. Foster care that crossed you bare. Few may be as heavy as yours, but I love you. Debbie Mathers. Oh, what a tangled web we have here. And
Oh,
I
wow.
think you should definitely listen to that as an artist and a lyricist, and really kind of like vibe with that. It might help you kind of through how he used his music, may even help you write a song. But it's a really good song, and it talks about all the things that went wrong and the kind of the abuse and the things that he endured. And it's called Headlights. It's by Eminem, but it just reminds me of your story, because you made a really good point. It's like you have a grudge, but at the same time you have the heart to know that one day you want to let go of that. And I think that's a powerful thing, because one, it keeps a boundary between you and her so you can continue to heal and be better, but it also keeps the door open, so when the time is right, you can set up that relationship. And my parents and I have a very loving relationship, but they're not as involved in my life as I would like to be. And I kind of have the same kind of grudge. And one day I plan to let that go and, have that emotional talk and, say what I got to say. But it does, I haven't been in your situation, but I recognize with you the feeling of having a grudge where you want to let go so bad, but at the same time you still feel so slighted, and it's just like, how do you handle that? And that's a constant battle that Ivan and I deal with. So I really appreciate that, and you bringing that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to talk a little bit about um the creativity. So we're at the hour and 30 hour mark. We have about 30 minutes left. The last 10 minutes will be left for you. I kind of opened that up to my guests, but I kind of want to talk about creativity. You talked about, and it's interesting. You made a couple comments that I wanted to address first, though. Um, the reason why, and I didn't mean to offend you about the dark humor and
No,
the
you didn't.
whole I wanted to get high before I shot myself. Tristan, a very good friend and podcast guest of the platform, actually is my suicide survivor, one of them. And he actually shot himself with a 12 gauge shotgun in the face and survived. And
Mm-hmm.
before he committed suicide, he actually wanted a beer. So it just made me kind of giggle, because we have talked, as a friend, a little bit in depth about that. And it was just interesting, because it's like, oh, it just seems like a common thing. Everybody wants to have something in place before they do. It's almost like a comfortability thing. So it was just ironic that you said that. So I just wanted to point that out, though, but I also wanted to apologize to make sure I did not offend you, because that was not the intent.
No, you didn't offend me at all.
Perfect. And then the second thing is, you had mentioned that doing the heroin, you thought that you could kind of tunnel in that fusion and that vibe of a musician, like the Kurt Cobain or Jimi Hendrix type thing, and you realize that you were kind of useless, but the lore of kind of being like the greats. I once talked to a great person on our podcast called Flower Child, and one of the reasons why she chose heroin was because her dad did heroin. She didn't have a relationship with her dad, so she thought if she started doing heroin, she would have a relationship with her dad. She wound up doing heroin with her dad. It didn't go very well, but that tie, was that any influence based on just like music industry and just what the scene is as an artist, or?
Um, well, just like I said earlier, my heroes were Jimmy Page and Slash and Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Clapton, and they all did cocaine and heroin, and some of them even did methamphetamine too, you know. And so I figured, well, if they're doing it, there must be something to it, and I can be productive and successful just like they are, you know. That's all it was, you know.
Well, I guess in history, a lot of them, it didn't really work out that well. You know, Jimi Hendrix died of an overdose. You know, Kurt Cobain, you know, took his own life. You know, so in a way, I guess in the limelight, it, you know, it probably works. But in reality, you know, I think even Prince, didn't he die of an overdose?
He
I
did.
mean, you have a lot of great people with so many talents, and it's so shocking that, you know, there's a constant battle. I guess why behind every great musician is a story, and you know, I guess you know that adds to it. But when you look at your life now, when you have those conversations with your wife, would like when you think that you want to use, like, how do you know even she can save you?
You know, it's a good question. I don't always know that she can, and sometimes I tell her, "You're not going to save me. Like, I'm doomed. I'm a loser, and I'm a nobody, and I'm nothing, and I'm just doomed to. I was born to lose, so you might as well give up." But she'll sort of pick me up and go, "You're not a loser. Like, you're a winner. You just don't see it right now." So there have been times when I've doubted her, but she's always come to my rescue. Like I said, I would have never gone to rehab had it not been for her, and I would have never gotten on uh, psych meds had it not been for her. I would have never gone into therapy had it not been for her. So like, but there's been times when I'm like, you can't save me. Why bother trying? Like, I'm never gonna amount to anything. Just give up and divorce me. And she's like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, you're just acting crazy right now.
I not the addiction part where I think I'm going to use, but when I go down a very negative mindset, which in a way is like a bad addiction to just constantly think negative, and sometimes I do, I say the same exact things to my wife. I'm a loser. I'm a nobody. I don't, you know, what am I even here for? Nobody gives a shit, you know. So I totally vibe with that, you know, and she exactly says what your wife says, the exact opposite, you know. And I think having people in our lives that can see what we can't is also a huge benefit when we're fighting demons or addiction or just mental health or just not feeling right. Because I can't tell you as you know, a person, how many times throughout the month where I feel just down and out, like just like no energy, no motivation, just total gone. And what do? You know what I mean? And to be able to have that love and support that you guys do, I think is going to set you up for success as long as you guys are together. And you know, what a blessing, you know, to have somebody that refuses to let you think the way you do about yourself. Because if they did, then it would all go wrong. So when you write your music, do you write, like, I've listened to only like one or two songs, so I do, please forgive me, but what is your main message through your music? Are you on a mission to tell your story in the sense of like addiction recovery and talk about the hard times? Do you use your music to forget? How do you really impact your own voice?
Well, when I'm writing music for myself, I deal with a lot of grief and loss. So I discuss grief and loss as like a big component in my music. When I write music for other people, I try to get into their headspace and write for them. But like when it comes to my stuff, a lot of it is very melodramatic and sad and sort of downtrodden because that's how I feel a lot of the time, you know, like, and I've had a great loss in my life. I lost my brother. So, um, I talk about that a lot. I wrote a song for him called Sleep Tight in the Water. And one of the main lyrics are, take me away from, no, take me away to a new place, away from myself, because dying is heaven and living is hell. And that kind of sums up how I feel a lot of the time. You know what I mean?
Talk about your brother. If your brother was here, and what would you say to him about all of this? Like, I think, you had mentioned that you and your brother had some discord because you guys were both addicts, but he thought you were different or less because you lost everything and he was still in control. But in a way, I guess, in a sense, you could say he lost control completely. Like, talk about that.
If he was here right now, the first thing I would do is apologize for saying the things that I said. And then I would just sort of tell him that I was sorry for always treating him like dirt. Like, my brother looked up to me a lot and he got really upset. And I hate to sound like an arrogant asshole, but like he was very envious of me. And he would tell me that like on a couple of occasions, he said, I wish I could be you. And I'd be like, why? Like, just do you, just be the best you can. Like, your problem is you're always so down on yourself and you have no confidence. That's why you feel this way. But I would tell my brother that he doesn't want to be like me, for one. He should just be himself, but that he should be the best version of himself and really try to. I mean, when my brother was on, he was on. He was sharp. He was working out. He was eating healthy. He was doing the right things, but he was so uncomfortable all the time with himself that he lied a lot. He would tell people things that weren't true because I think he was super uncomfortable and insecure about himself. And I would just try to encourage him to be honest with himself and everybody else. And that like he was a really genuine good person. He was funny, he was good natured, he was, and I would try to remind him of all those things.
Do you think because he felt so low, maybe that's why the overdose happened, or just was he a person that used a lot, so heavy amounts maybe wouldn't be such a surprise?
I think he had a high tolerance at a certain point, but didn't know his limit. He overdosed on fentanyl, and fentanyl is scary because you never know what you're getting. You never know the quality of it. Sometimes you get pills that are pretty weak. Sometimes you get pills that are really strong, and he got the ones that were really strong, and he took too many of them and succumbed, and he made the classic mistake of going to sleep before he took them. I always tell people, if you're going to use, don't go to sleep, because if your brain forgets to breathe, that's it. I've had several friends that have died that way. They took their pills and then they went to bed. Maybe he was using it to cope with sleeping issues. I don't know. I think he was just getting high, but he took them right before he went to bed, according to his girlfriend at the time. And that is something you do not do, because
It's kind of like
essentially,
GHB. You can't fall asleep on it.
yeah, because there are dangerous consequences associated with that. So
Now, why? Okay, so my opinion, like with psychedelics, like I would take mine and want to stay awake. I've never thought about taking mushrooms and then going to bed right away. What is the allure of going to bed when you take fentanyl? I thought the whole
well,
point was to be like awake and
yeah. Well, it makes you nod off, and it kind of makes you in sort of a weird halfway asleep, halfway awake sort of state of mind anyway. And I have known some people to be like, I just can't sleep unless I take, fent or opiates. Like, I can't sleep without opiates. And so they take them while they're awake too during the day because they're just addicted, but then they take them right before they go to bed. And that's like a big no-no. So like, I think it's just one of those things. Like, sometimes I do take kratom before I go to sleep because it calms me down and it does help me sleep, but you can't there's no such thing as a fatal overdose on kratom unless you mix it. You have to mix it with certain things, and then you get into no territory. But um yeah, I think he was just having trouble sleeping, and yeah, he just sort of went to sleep one night and never woke up.
now does that ever play into your mind? Lacey, my wife, her good friend, which now just escapes my mind. Her friend overdosed and was rolled up in a rug and dumped out of a moving vehicle in like 32-degree weather and was found by police and brought to the hospital half dead from an overdose.
Hmm.
Her brother got so upset that night, he did it and he wound up dying. She survived, but she then relapsed and then died as well. And it was just one of those things where, since you've lost your brother and that's a part of your life, your music, your spirit, do you really think that it would be worth it to wind up in the same fate? Or
No. Yeah, absolutely not. I want to live now more than ever so that I can make my brother proud.
keep talking about that, because my biggest thing is, I've never lost somebody like close like that to like addiction, but do you think that there could be a time in your life where that reminder still isn't enough?
Absolutely. I would really like to make something of myself and start some sort of a charitable organization that helps addicts get back on their feet and helps them, sort of beat the stigma, because there's a lot people think that if you're an addict, you're just a piece of trash and that you're a criminal, and that's just not how it is. A lot of addicts, they do commit crime to get their drugs, but they didn't start out that way. They were a normal person. They were someone's son or someone's daughter, and they just went down the wrong way. And I would want to live so that I can help people that are in my brother's position, that are struggling and don't know what to do. My big dream is to open up my own rehab one day. That's like one of my lifelong goals. It's going to be a rehab that integrates music and filmmaking into rehabilitation, creativity as a way to harness your desires of using, because that's what really has helped me, is music and creativity. So I would just love to open up a rehab in his honor and his memory, and maybe name it after him or something.
That's a great way to leave a legacy for yourself and your brother, and to bring a true awareness to the situation. I think it's a great idea. And if you do this, I'd love to talk about possibly helping with curriculum for film, because I own a video production company. So, when it comes to the video and filmmaking, that's what I do. So I think that is great, because, giving somebody the tools of an artist where they can be creative with their mind and let their mind create their wildest dreams and allow their wildest dreams to take them where they never thought they could be. That's the true value, and if you can set those people free, not only like what a legacy to your brother, but what a job for yourself, because you didn't just save yourself at that point. You would have been able to put yourself in a position to save others. And that's what I, even though I'm not a doctor or a therapist in any way, that's what I try to do with this podcast, is just simple conversation can do a lot for somebody, especially in a hard place. So, your music, your story, everything that supports you, you're going to be successful and you're going to have your rehab. You just got to put it in the universe and go ahead and make good on it, but you already have it. So I think that's really awesome. What a way to give back. That's so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, dude. Well, okay. So we got 15 minutes left. What I would like to do is just quickly talk about advice for other people. So, you never know who's watching this. And I kind of just leave the last, 15 minutes up to you to talk about what you want or what we didn't discuss, and just some pieces of advice, some little free game for those who are truly struggling.
So I always used to have like these words of inspiration and wisdom, but I was really full of shit. Like, I don't know. I always tell people now, in all honesty, you have to do what works for you. You have to do what absolutely works best for you. And like, whatever that may be, like I said earlier, if methadone is what makes you a productive member of society and helps you fulfill your dreams and your wants and your wishes and your desires, then do methadone. If Suboxone helps you do that, do Suboxone. If Subutex helps you do that, do Subutex. If if by some divine miracle heroin is what makes you thrive and helps you achieve all your dreams, who am I to say that that's wrong? I don't know. I've never met anybody that was able to survive and function and live well on heroin, but you know, I probably would say, instead of doing the heroin, dig deep into your psyche, into your traumas and what's going on with you, and try to figure out what it is that makes you want to use. So therapy is a good way to do that. If you need medication, get on the right meds. I'm not a poster child for medication. I just know that it works for me. But you just have to do what works for you in life. You know what I mean? Like, I love creating things. I love doing things with film, and I love doing things with music, and I love collaborating with other people. So, and that's what keeps me sane and sober a lot of the time. Now, there's other things like my wife and my kids, and just me wanting to be sober and wanting to live. I have those moments, of course, where I don't want to live and I don't want to be sober and I don't want to, you know, function the way that I have been functioning. But those moments now are few and far between. They're very fleeting too. I know that even though I feel down sometimes, it's a fleeting moment and that it will soon pass. You know, this too shall pass. That's absolutely true. Most of the time, I'm generally pretty happy, and, you know, I know that things are moving in the direction I want them to move in, and I'm collaborating with some great people on some great things. And so I always say, just do what works for you, you know? A lot of people are against kratom. I know that everybody in the rehab that I went to, they were against kratom. I've had therapists that were against it. They were like, no, you don't know the quality. You don't know where you're getting it from. It's still an addiction, and it's not monitored, and it's not regulated or approved, so you shouldn't do it. And I just don't buy that. It's absolutely, you can't overdose on it. The withdrawals from it, like if you do get withdrawals, are very minimal compared to heroin withdrawals. Like, whenever I was hardcore addicted to kratom and I didn't have it, I would just get a minor cold and like would sneeze a little bit and sort of feel like I had, just a cold. So I don't know, but then again, I have met people that were hardcore addicted to it and said that they couldn't function without it and that their life was falling apart. And they were, I knew one guy that was actually stealing from his business. Like, he had a business partner and he was ripping him off, and it was all in the pursuit of buying more kratom. So that's no good. That clearly did not work for him. So that just goes back to what I said. You have to do what works for you. And if kratom is not working for you and it's making you destroy everything in your life, then you got to get off the kratom. So yeah, I mean, I have to give another shout out to my wife. She's a superhero. She does so much. She's in school right now to be a nurse practitioner. She goes to work. She watches the 2 kids. She watches me. I'm like the biggest pain in the ass there is, and she has to babysit me some of the time. So like, if she can do that, she can do anything. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, I would say just do what works for you and try to be happy.
Yeah. And I always say that happiness is a state of mind. It's not a place that we live in. It's a place that we create. Happiness doesn't exist. We create happiness. And by doing those things, I think you'll be extremely happy. Last little bit, we got 10 minutes left. Talk about your music. What are your music goals? Where do you want to be in 5 years? What is up next for Josh?
So, and I'll leave everybody with this one thought too, because there is a lot of romanticizing around heroin. Heroin made me feel like I had wings, but it also made me feel like I was trapped in a cage, so I couldn't fly away. And if you're in that place, and you want to reach out to me, please feel free to do so. But for me, personal goals are, I'd like to continue making music for film. I'd like to continue writing songs with people. I'd like to continue producing for other people. I'd like to be involved in projects that allow me to do music full time for a living. If people, I know a lot of people that own video production companies like yourself, and they reach out to me for music all the time, and I think that's great. And I love working with new people, and so I just like to be a part of whoever and everybody's project.
If you could play on any stage, what stage would it be?
That's a hard one. Like any stage with any musician or just any stage?
You pick. You can do it any stage or any stage with a musician. Where would be like it? Where's the utopia of where you could wind up playing?
I would want to play Madison Square Garden. And
Oh,
if I
that's
could,
a great one.
yeah, and if I could pick any musician, it would either be the Strokes or Led Zeppelin.
Oh, very cool. What is your bonding with their music from Led Zeppelin? I love Stairway to Heaven personally, and now unfortunately I'm not a huge Led Zeppelin fan, so that's really the only song in Immigrant. I like that song, but I don't know too many others. I know a little bit music deficient, but Led Zeppelin, why them?
Well, Led Zeppelin changed my life in that the first time I heard them and recognized and identified who they were, I really wanted to pursue music full time. Like I wanted to be a great musician based on their music. I was like, okay, I know what I want to do now. I want to be the best guitar player that there is. And then I wanted to be the best piano player that there is because of Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones. And I wanted to be the best music arranger and composer. And then the Strokes made me want to go into music professionally. When I first heard the Strokes, I was like, okay, I know what I want to do with my life. I want to be a musician for a living. That's how I want to make my living. I want to write songs and make music professionally. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
It absolutely does. And I love that inspiration. It's kind of like the cliche, as a child, you see something, you're like, I want to do this forever. And you wind up pursuing it. And that is amazing. So is there any particular song by both bands that you like that just resonate, like that's your favorite song?
Well, the song that changed my life by Led Zeppelin was All of My Love, but that ended up being my parents' wedding song, and their music or they divorced, and so it's kind of got a positive connotation but a negative one too. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the song that really speaks to me by Led Zeppelin, even though All of My Love changed my life, I'm going to say I don't know about Led Zeppelin. I love every single one of their songs. There's not a song by them I don't like, except for maybe Immigrant Song. I'm not a big fan of that song. But every song by them I love. So I can't pick one by Led Zeppelin. But the Strokes, it's Last Night. The song Last Night by the Strokes. That song changed my life. And that was the one that was like, okay, I'm going to go into music professionally now, and I'm going to make a living at music.
You're like, I'm going to do this. Yeah, that's awesome. It's cool to see that, that's something that even though you went through a whole lot, that you're able to hold on to and reclaim. At least, you didn't give it up, and now you're doing something completely not passionate and, just trying to survive. I think being creative, like I said earlier, is just a gift. And the more creative you can be in life, I think the more fun you have.
Absolutely.
So is there anything else that we have not talked about or haven't discussed that you would like to add?
That's a good question. Just be all you can be, and whatever it is that you love, like pursue it. Go at it with 100%, live it, breathe it, drink it, shit it.
Poop it out.
Yeah. Poop it out, then eat it back up, and not the poop, but the nourishment.
I know some animals do that. My dog does that, but no.
Yeah, but do everything that you love to do and be the best at it that you can, and again, do what works for you. Music works for me, so I have to do it. It's not even about something that I love anymore. I still love music very much, but I'm good at it. I know I'm good at it, and it works for me. It works for my sobriety. It works for my peace of mind. It works for my mental space, my well-being. Like it totally, it works for me. It helps me focus and concentrate and try new things, and it helps me stay sane and sober. So there's days when I hate music, and I'm like, music is such bullshit. It's subjective. I don't know why people do it. But I still say to myself, but I have to do it because I know that it's what helps keep me sober.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
No, okay. So I got two final questions for you.
Sure.
First of all, what do you think you gained out of being on this podcast today?
Well, all the other podcasts I've been on have talked more about addiction than mental health. And I think I really got to dive into my mental health today, which was awesome. I've never gotten to do that. It's been great. I think we tackled a lot of interesting topics, but the most valuable to me was the mental health topic. And I got to go into some of the things that I experience and go through, which was really great. It was very cathartic. So there's that. Yeah, I enjoyed this podcast. I enjoyed your questions very much. I'd love to do this again with you.
Well, I would love to have you on, and maybe next time we could get you to perform a little bit. You know, I'm trying to get some musicians to actually, you know, perform to introduce music and kind of make it more fun. So you are more than absolutely invited back. Also, I am starting more virtual online panels. I would love for you to be a panelist on some of the mental health panels that I'll have digitally. So we can definitely stay. And hey, if paths ever cross and you're ever in Virginia or I'm ever you're in Texas, right?
I'm in Texas.
Yeah, if I'm ever in Texas, we got to link up, you know. And once you take off with your music and your rehab, I want to come down for a tour, you know, and we'll do a podcast at your brand new facility. So that'll be fucking cool. So believe me, there's a lot of opportunity. And I also love for you to join the Discord. A lot of my podcast guests join the Discord, and there you can actually speak to Tristan and Henry, my other suicide survivors that are also going to be on the podcast. He'll be on July 8th, so make sure you tune in July 8th. Henry is a great person, but it's like a family environment. We talk every day, and it's a good way to just check in. And believe me, you know, and I'm not just saying this online, but if you ever need somebody to talk to and it's not your wife, you can always just reach out to me. You know, I'm more than happy to be there, because I'm really glad that you said that the best thing that you got out of this was the mental health, because see the right there, the Vindic EU, which stands for I Heal, which is my brand that's supportive and focused, hyper focused on mental health. That's what I'm hoping that they get out of this. So I really love and just am so thankful that you feel the way you do, because it lets me know that the work I'm doing on my platform is giving the vibe and the mission that I'm trying to achieve, which is healing myself and healing others. And, you know, like you just said, how can you heal yourself or others if you can't heal yourself? And that is a number one thing, because I am not perfect. I don't have it all together. I make tons of mistakes. There's a lot wrong with me. So believe me, you know, I'm nothing to gloat about, but I learn each day from other people. And that gives me gratitude, which is something that I'm working on, and really being appreciative of what I have and what I have to work with. Because like you, I feel like a loser sometimes. I feel out of place. I don't feel like Madman Plant or anybody. I feel like the guy that's walking down the street, you know, feeling the same way I do. You know what I mean? So it's a very real feeling. So, you know, just tonight, you've just hit the nail on the head with so many great viewpoints. And I just know that somebody watching this is going to see this one day, and it's going to change their life. And, you know, you're going to change your own, you know, and that is just a wonderful thing. The last question I have is, what made you decide to be on the show?
I was browsing through Instagram, and I found your podcast, and I started checking out the episodes and the videos. And one that caught my attention, I think it was the suicide survivor. Tristan is his name.
Yep, Tristan. Yep.
He's has a facial injury,
Oh, big
correct?
time. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I was watching that and I was like blown away. I was like, wow, this is very impactful and powerful. So I decided to
I will
reach
tell
out
him
and
you said that.
yeah.
That's awesome. Like I said, please join the Discord and you can talk to Tristan yourself. He is a great person. And just like you and my other guests have such a great viewpoint of life moving forward. And I think that's the beautiful thing is one thing about life is it's long, which gives you time. You know, like they say, if you don't make it in your 20s, you'll make it in your 30s. If you don't make it in your 30s, you'll make it in your 40s. If you don't make it in your 40s, you'll make it in your 50s. And if you look at very successful people, most people did not achieve a success until late 30s, early 40s, even 50s, especially when we talk about people that are billionaires. Most of them did not make $1 billion until they were at least 55 years old. So the fact that you're 28, I believe, you said that, right?
I'm 36.
30. Oh, dude, you're the same age I am. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Wow, we're really on point tonight. Sorry, the person earlier I was talking to is 28. But no,
Okay.
that is amazing. And you know, like I said, we're like we still have so much ahead of us, you know, and that's the beautiful thing is the road is long. And I just love that about life. It's just how you proportion it. And I know my wife's yelling at me. She said, laugh out loud, Stefan.
Yeah.
But oh, hold on. Oh, GI, thank you for joining the podcast. We're about to end, but if you want to answer his quick question, just that's my good friend GI. He's also part of our Discord. He had asked you, how do you deal with your bad days? How do you stay motivated?
I basically talk to somebody and I make music. That I talk to my wife first. Like she's my first go-to person. And if that doesn't work, I talk to my therapist. And if that doesn't work, then I talk to my writing partner, Kenny. Um, and I just kind of tell them what's going on. And they listen and they always have great advice or they're just great listeners. And I stay motivated by looking at the light at the end of the tunnel. I want to be a billionaire one day. And if I'm not a billionaire, a millionaire would suffice. But if I'm not a millionaire, a thousandaire would suffice too. If I'm making six figures, doing
Not
what
a
I like doing,
hundredaire.
and no, that I couldn't do. But
Thousandaire,
yeah,
huh? I never heard that one. That one's a new one for me.
yeah, a thousandaire. That means 100,000 or more.
Oh, I was thinking $1,000 or more. I was like, yeah,
No, yeah, 100,000 plus.
there you go. All right. Well, before we wrap up, how can people find and support you?
So if you want to listen to some of my music, go to joshdatant.com. That's JOSHDATANT.com. If you want to follow me on Instagram, please do. It's at Josh Datant. And, I always ask people to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. My link is at Josh Datant. And again, that's JOSHDATANT.
Yes, please do. I did check out about 2 of your songs on the webs. I think it was on the website is where I went to because that's where I had to go to get your bio. And it was very cool. And I think you're gonna like it. And I'll definitely be checking out it more, especially since you talk about some of the darker stuff. Do you know a band called One Less Reason?
No.
Okay, I'm going to turn you on to some of my favorite songs as well that I deal with when I have a rough day and that you can kind of vibe with. And I would love for for you to share any song with you in particular that is your number one, because I would love to start listening to it to support you. So
Sure.
I think that's really great. But I'm going to turn you on to One Less Reason. They're a band out of Tennessee, and I've been listening to them for probably like almost 15 years. And some of the lyrics, a lot of them are about the lead singer's girlfriend's suicide.
Okay.
And it's kind of dark, like some of the days are like a day to be left alone, a lifetime burning. Where I get the whole inspiration for the podcast is actually from the song Where Did You Go? And in the song, which refers directly to what I'm doing here, is when I was looking for a change in you, I found a change in me that I didn't see. And that's the chorus hook in the song. But it's what I'm doing. I'm looking for a change in other people to find something in me that I'm obviously not seeing, because if I was, I would, not be dealing with mental health myself. So,
Yeah. That's awesome.
But yeah, guys, this has been an awesome podcast. Josh, thank you so much again for your testimonial and just being here with us and spending the 2 hours. We'll definitely have you on the show again. I definitely look forward to it. And, I'll definitely help promote your music through sharing it online and stuff like that. I know other people will in the chat, but, it's been a really great night. Everybody, I'm going to peace out. Josh, just stay on the camera. Don't leave just yet. All right.
Okay. Thanks, you guys.
Peace, everybody. Have a wonderful night.